The deed felt heavier than paper had any right to. It was folded twice and tucked in the inside pocket of my vest, close enough to my chest that I could feel the edges press every time I breathed. That deed was my life. 39 years of sweat, bone-deep labor, and every last coin I'd scraped together. No cattle left in my name, no stock tucked away, no family waiting. Just this, a patch of land out in the nowhere, between dry creek beds and the sound of the wind. A place I could finally claim as my own. I had pictured it for weeks as I rode an empty farmhouse, boards creaking in the sun, a roof begging for repair. Silence around it, so thick I could hear myself think for once. A rancher's dream wasn't fancy, it was simple. Solitude, control, a chance to build without owing any man a favor. So when my mare crested the rise, and I saw smoke thin from the chimney, I froze in the saddle. That chimney was supposed to be cold. That porch was supposed to be mine alone to step on first. 3 figures stood waiting, like they'd heard the sound of my boots on the wind. Women, not men. Not just women, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed, plain, but carrying themselves with the surety of those who had claimed this yard long before me. Their shadows cut across the porch as if the sun bent to them. The tallest, her blonde hair braided tight against her skull, stepped forward. Her arms were corded like a ranch hand's, and she smiled with a kind of practiced ease. "You must be Boon Whitmore," she said, voice calm but sharpened at the edges. "We've been expecting you." Expecting me. Every muscle in me tightened. I slid from the saddle slow, my boots crunching against the dirt yard. The mare flicked, her ears uneasy. I put a steadying hand on her flank, though truth was I was steadying myself. "I reckon you've got me at a disadvantage," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "This here's my place, deeds in my name." The 2 women behind her didn't move, just watched me the way coyotes watch a calf that's wandered too far. One was dark-haired, arms crossed firm. The other, red-haired and sharp-eyed, shifted. Like her boots itched to move closer. The tall one, Helena, I'd learn later didn't flinch. Marcus Vance promised us this land was taken care of. Promised he'd send the next man to keep it going. Marcus Vance, the name curdled in my gut. He was the seller, sure, but he'd barely said a dozen words to me. Just signed papers. Took my money and disappeared. I forced a laugh, though it came out rough. "Promised you?" "That deed in my pocket says otherwise." Her smile thinned. "That paper won't warm you at night. And it won't help you if you walk away." Chill. Crawled my spine out of place under the burning sun. I wasn't a man who spooked easy. I'd broken horses meaner than most. But there was something about the way she said it, like I'd stepped off the map and into a trap I didn't see laid. Still, I squared my shoulders, pulled the folded deed from my vest, and held it up like a shield. "This land's mine," I said, "and I'll not be turned around after 3 days' ride." The women glanced at one another, then back at me, as if measuring whether I was worth the trouble. For the first time since I'd signed my name, I wondered if freedom was about to cost me more than money. Helena came down the steps slow, as if there were rules to how a body should move in my yard, and she'd written them. The other 2 fanned wide, hemming me between porch and well. Their boots said what their mouths hadn't ready. "What did Marcus tell you?" Helena asked. "Beyond the money and the fence line." "That he was done with this place," I said, moving on. "He moved on," the redhead said, dry as mesquite. "He just didn't move alone." I let my hand touch the rifle scabbard, not to threaten, just to remember it was there. "State your business plain." Helena's mouth flattened. "Plain, then. You'll stay. You'll run this ranch with us. And you'll be with us. All 3. It landed like a boot to the chest. Not the notion so much as the certainty in her voice, like weather or law. I looked back down the rutted road. No riders, no help, just heat shaking over miles I'd already paid for with skin. I could turn the mare and run, but running wouldn't hand me back the future I'd bought. "You figure me a stud bull?" I said. "Led by a ring?" The dark-haired one, steady, quiet, shook her head. Figure you a man who wants what we want. Work, profit, a life not lived alone. I counted a slow breath. Rifles fix what rifles can reach. Promises and debts crawl under doors. I let my hand fall to my side. What arrangements? I asked. Marcus sold me land and a house. He didn't sell me people. Helena lifted her chin a notch. He promised we wouldn't be put back on the road. Promised the next owner would keep the work going and keep us with it. He left more than a handshake. My stomach rolled. I could still see Marcus avoiding my eyes while ink dried on the sea. Deed, his boots hurrying from the office like the floor was hot. Even if he promised you the moon, I said, my name's on the paper. I don't take orders on my own porch. Then don't, Helena said, and it rattled me more than if she'd shouted. Stay because it makes sense. Because the herd needs 4 sets of hands. Because water rights don't defend themselves. Because you're tired of talking to a horse and a stove. She had no right to know it, but she'd hit the places I kept quiet. The mare bumped my shoulder. Magdalene tipped her head. We can do this ugly or we can do this ordinary. Redraw your lines, Mr. Whitmore. Sleep under this roof. Eat at this table. Take your turn like the rest of us. No one's asking for a church wedding. We're asking you not to leave. A bitter laugh came and went. Asking? I said. You've boxed me like a calf. Boxed isn't the word, the quiet. One Ruth said. We held this place when Marcus ran. We can hold you if you run too, but we're not here to ruin you. She nodded at my mare. Unsaddle. Water her. Then come inside. We'll lay it out plain. I met their eyes. Helena's steady challenge. Ruth's patience. Magdalene's fire. I could make this a gun story. Or a smart man story. Fine, I said. I'm not stepping past that threshold until I hear the whole of it. But I'll hear it. Helena turned without triumph. Good, she said. Bring your deed. The air inside the farmhouse was thick, with the smell of wood smoke and something stewing on the stove, but it was the silence that pressed hardest on me. The 3 of them moved with the ease of people who belonged their chairs pulled out. Cups poured, boots scuffing on boards that didn't creak under their weight. I stood near the door, hat in hand, dust still clinging to me. Feeling more intruder than owner Dot, Helena placed a folded packet of papers on the table. She smoothed them flat, eyes steady on mine. Marcus didn't just sell you land, she said. He sold you his debts. The words struck deeper than a whip crack. I stepped forward, snatched the papers, and unfolded them. Not just one contract, but several loan agreements, liens, and something stranger, a partnership bond, scribbled in Marcus's bold hand. My throat tightened as I read clauses about companionship, about obligations of successor. Legal words twisted with promises no court in the territory would laugh at, but none I could tear in half without tearing at my own claim. You're lying, I said, though the ink burned my eyes. Magdalene leaned forward, her red hair spilling over her shoulder. Look close at the signatures, Rancher. His and the notary's, both real. He swore that whoever bought this place took it all, debts, work, and us. My knees nearly gave. I gripped the edge of the table to keep upright. Every mile I'd ridden here, every dollar I'd scraped into Marcus's greedy hands, it had all been a trap. You expect me to believe I'm bound to this? I rasped, shaking the papers. Helena's jaw tightened. We expect you to see what Marcus left behind. He used us. He made promises we wanted to believe. When the money ran out, so did he. But he swore the next man would not run. Ruth finally spoke, her voice low but unshakable. We're not asking you to play husband. We're asking you to understand this place isn't just dirt and boards. It's blood, sweat, and betrayal. We bled for it, same as you paid for it. The papers blurred in my hand. I wanted to storm out, ride until the horizon swallowed me whole. But the thought of starting over again, of empty pockets and no land, tore at something inside me worse than these women's claims. I forced a laugh, though my throat was raw. Marcus was a snake, and you let him coil around you. But I'm no fool. That deed in my vest is ironclad. This land is mine. Helena's eyes softened, not in surrender, but in pity. Paper can make a man think he's safe. But paper didn't keep Marcus from ruining us, and it won't keep you from his shadow. I lowered myself into a chair, the deed heavy against my chest, the contracts heavier in my hands. My certainty cracked, and through it came something I didn't want to name, the first flicker of doubt that maybe this fight wasn't against them at all. I sat stiff in that chair while the three of them watched me like a jury that wanted truth, not a hanging. The papers lay between us, heavy as old promises. I couldn't square at rancher, owner, and somehow debtor to strangers cooking at a stove like it had always been theirs. Start with names, I said. If we're to talk straight, the tall one tipped her chin. Helena. Up close I saw wine burn on her cheeks and a white scar under her jaw, like a crescent moon. I kept the books and the men off the porch, she said. When Marcus brought cattle, I tallied. When he brought trouble, I told it to leave. The dark-haired woman folded her hands. Ruth, she said, I run water, dug the laterals, set boards, kept the spring from silting. When the creek turned mean last spring, I stayed till it fell quiet. Rope burns crossed her knuckles, pale rings. Magdalene, the redhead, smirked without joy. They call me Maggie. When they want something, she said. Traded with freight boys, sold eggs to track hands, fixed a busted gear with a hairpin and swearing. Marcus liked that I could talk money without blinking. She tipped her head so I could see the notch chipped out of her front tooth. He didn't like that I kept copies. Helena slid another sheet across the table, her handwriting neat. Inventory. Head count, tools, stores, seed under the floor. Who owes us and who we owe. He promised percentage to us, not just wages. Her voice thinned. He promised a home. They weren't sirens. They were weathered, scarred, stubborn. How'd he leave? I asked. Ruth answered, quiet. Sunrise, she said. Said he had to ride into town for a check rein. He left the halter hanging. By dusk, the notary came with papers and a smile that didn't reach his teeth. Maggie laughed once, short, and a deputy with his thumb on his belt buckle like a promise. Anger came up hard and clean, not at them. At the part of me that had seen Marcus slide his eyes away and believed anyway, because I wanted a thing so badly it made me blind. A rancher without a pasture is just a man with calluses. I had bought dirt and sky, and the right to sleep without a landlord's mood. I had not bargained on ghosts. Helena mistook my silence for retreat. If you mean to ride, ride now, she said. We'll feed your mare and wish you luck, but the creditors will follow the deed like buzzards. They won't ask if you were fooled. I touched the bond again, running my thumb over the word companionship. I don't give myself on paper, I said. Not to a dead man's chores and not to anyone's bed. Ruth met my eyes. We didn't ask that, she said. We asked you to see us. I looked at all three until the room steadied. The stove ticked. A windmill groaned. I set my hat on the table like an apology and drew the packet closer. All right, I said. Read me every clause you think binds me. Then show me the ditch you cut, the calves you pulled, the ledger you balanced. If I'm to stand in Marcus Vance's shadow, I'll measure it before I burn it. Maggie's mouth did a small, surprised thing, almost a smile. Helena sat back, the fight in her eyes giving way to tired. Ruth reached for a pencil. We read. The ledger pages smelled faintly of dust and lamp oil, corners softened from hands, turning them over and over. I sat hunched at the table, my elbows planted firm, eyes dragging across words that made less sense the more I read them. Marcus had been clever. He'd laced practical agreements with language so slippery it could mean anything or everything. There were clauses about dividing profits, sharing tools, tending stock, That much I could stomach. But then the tone shifted, almost tender, and there it was again, companionship, written vague enough to cover every sort of bond a man and woman could strike, but binding enough to make a rancher like me sweat under the collar. I dropped the page and rubbed my eyes. "This is half a business contract and half a fairy tale," I muttered. "No fairy tale," Helena said, her voice low. "He made us believe. Promised we were partners, not hired hands. Swore we had a stake, that we mattered." Ruth added, "We built corrals, stitched harness, broke ground with him. We stayed when he started drifting, thinking we were more than his past mistakes." Maggie's laugh was sharp. "We were fools, but fools with memories that don't let us forget." I leaned back, the chair creaking beneath me. My first instinct was to declare the whole thing nonsense, ride to the county seat, and let a judge spit on Marcus's script. But I knew better. Judges could be bought, and creditors smelled blood faster than wolves. "What is it you're after?" I asked finally. Not Marcus's words, not his lies, yours. The three women exchanged glances, a silent talk that carried more weight than a courtroom speech. Helena answered for them. "We want what we already built to be recognized. Our sweat's in these walls, same as yours will be. We won't leave, and we won't be cast aside. What we're proposing, what he promised, is partnership, work, profits, and a place at the table. And yes, companionship, if it grows that way." The word settled heavy between us. My pulse kicked up, not from desire, but from the trap of it all. A rancher dreams of good grass and fair trade, not arrangements inked in another man's hand. "Partnership I can weigh," I said slowly. "But you'll not bully me into warming beds because Marcus couldn't keep promises." Helena's face softened, the hard lines easing. "We're not asking for that by force. Only honesty. Only a chance to see what grows if none of us run." For the first time since stepping on that porch, I felt something shift, not in them, but in me. Beneath the fear and anger was a hollow I hadn't named before. Years of silence in bunkhouses, meals eaten alone by lamplight, words that died in my throat because no one was there to hear them. I folded the contract, set it on the table. "Then say it plain. You want me to join you, not as Marcus's ghost, but as Boon Whitmore. Rancher. Partner." Ruth's eyes met mine, calm and steady. "That's exactly what we're saying." I exhaled long, the first breath that didn't taste like iron. "All right. Show me what you've built. If I'm to be a partner, I'll see the proof with my own eyes." Morning broke pale over the far hills. I hadn't slept much. The deed in my vest might as well have been a branding iron. I lay on a bed I hadn't earned yet, listening to the windmill creak and someone moving in the kitchen. It smelled like coffee and biscuits. Helena knocked once on the door jamb and waited, as if to say this house followed rules. "We'll talk clear this morning," she said. "No heat, no threats." "I favor clear," I answered, pulling on my boots. Heat waste water. At the table, Ruth had a ledger open to a blank page, pencil sharpened to a needle. Maggie slid a plate in front of me, 2 biscuits, and a fried egg lacy at the edges. "Before you decide," she said, "you should know what we are and aren't." "What we aren't," Helena said, "is property. Not to Marcus, not to you. What we are is a working outfit with no patience for a 4th child." "I'm housebroke and mostly quiet," I said. I put my plate in the washpan and used the door like a Christian. A ghost of a smile. The room loosened a notch. Ruth tapped the ledger. "Terms, equal say in operations. Profits divided by contribution weighted for capital and labor rebalanced each quarter. Debts, every line and note shown. Any creditor meets all of us or none." Maggie added, "Boundaries. No one opens another's drawer or reads a letter that isn't theirs. No promises muttered at the stove that can't stand at the table." "And companionship?" I asked, raced for the trap. Helena didn't blink. "Not required, not a debt. It's a door we don't bar and don't force open. We eat together. We watch each other's backs. If belonging grows, it grows because we let it. Loneliness is a kind of hunger. You can pretend you've beat it, but it waits at the edge of every long day. You left one term out, I said. My name on the deed stays. But if we do this, I'll file papers in town partnership registered, shares spelled plain. No more of Marcus's fog. Agreed, Ruth said, pencil scratching. What about the neighbors? I asked. Men who ride by slow to count plates and draw conclusions you can't sell cows on. Maggie shrugged. They were going to talk anyway. We'll trade them beef and let their wives tell them to hush. Helena leaned forward, voice low. Boon, we're not a kindness. We'll work you like a borrowed mule in spring. We won't praise you for doing what has to be done. But when the river comes up or a colt gets sideways, there'll be 3 pairs of hands next to yours. Something loosened in my chest. I thought of saddling in the dark because no one else would, of shouting at coyotes to hear a voice. I'll take mule work if it means hearing somebody cuss at the same time, I said. Helena held out her hand rough and warm. Then you'll see it before you sign it, she said. Laterals, cuts, herd, books. We'll walk the place end to end. You can say no at sundown. I'll say what's true at sundown, I answered. If this is a trick, it'll show its teeth. Maggie set her hat. Teeth you'll see, Mr. Whitmore, she said, but they bite the right direction. We ate, cleared the plates, and stepped into a day that felt like a gate swinging open. The day stretched long, and they showed me every inch of the place, as if I were both guest and judge. Ruth led me first to the irrigation ditches she'd cut by hand, water whispering through boards angled just so. Soil won't drink without coaxing, she said, crouching to adjust a gate with the patience of a mother soothing a child. Her palms were scarred raw from shovels, proof she hadn't spun lies at the table. From there, Maggie brought me to the barns. She swung doors wide, letting the smell of hay and stock roll out. The cattle were lean but alive, hides brushed clean, salt blocks set neat. Chickens scuttled, fat and fussing. She rattled off trade tallies with pride, naming buyers in town who trusted her word more than Marcus's. Because I delivered what I said I would, she snapped, then soft. Unlike him. Helena walked me through the farmhouse last. Fresh chinked seams in the walls, new shingles over the porch, beds built solid from pine. We kept this roof up ourselves, she said simply, because it was all we had left. By sundown, my boots were caked in dust, my mind heavier than when I'd ridden in. Everything they'd claimed, they had proved. This ranch wasn't propped up by Marcus's promises. It stood because 3 women refused to let it die. But truth cuts both ways. In the loft, Helena finally laid it bare. He left more than debts, she said. A note in town says we owe near double what we've earned. They'll come to collect within weeks. If they take the herd or the water rights, it's done. My throat went dry. Anger surged, hot and sharp not at them, but at the snake who sold me this noose. Marcus Vance had pocketed my life savings and handed me a ledger full of rot. I stared at the land through the window, the fences, the cattle, the work already bled into it. My fists clenched. I'll settle it, I said. Every debt, but no fog, no shadows. From now on, the ranch runs legal and clean. And as for the rest, whatever grows between us will grow natural, or not at all. Helena's eyes narrowed, searching for bluff. Ruth's lips parted like she meant to thank me, but held back. Maggie only nodded, as if she'd been waiting for, and to say it. For the first time since stepping on that porch, I felt not trapped, but standing on ground that might hold. 3 months turned to stranger into the shape that belongs in the doorway. By harvest, the first note was paid, then the second. The clerk who'd smirked at my pockets read our ledger twice and lost his smirk. We sold beef on time, seed for cash, and a busted reaper for parts. The ranch didn't just breathe again, it found its lungs. Work stayed work, no romance in a shovel, no poetry in a blister, but the way we moved made its own grammar. Ruth rose in the blue before dawn, checked the head gate, and I followed. with a wrench I didn't need yet, so she wouldn't walk the ditch alone. Maggie swore at tally sticks and charmed freight men who tried to short her a penny. She'd come home with an extra bolt of calico and a story. Helena kept the long view what to sell, what to hold, whom to trust, and whom to let talk themselves tired. Neighbors rode by slow. One counted plates through the window and went home to sermonize. Another asked outright. I shrugged. We brand our cattle and our paperwork. The rest isn't for sale. Word traveled. So did beef. Complaints don't season a stew. Salt does jealousy. Came like weather quick, then gone, then back. I'd watch Helena's hand brush Ruth's sleeve, or Maggie's laugh carried down the yard, and an old meanness climbed out of the place I'd buried it. I learned to say it plain. I'm feeling left out today. Someone would nudge a chair with a boot or press a cup into my hand, and the feeling would settle like dust after a gust. Companionship wasn't a rule. It was rain arriving when it would, soaking where it chose, leaving everything smelling human. The last creditor rode out with a stamped receipt and a surprised face. Coyotes tuned up in the gullies. We sat on the porch while the day bled out of the boards. Helena leaned against the post. Ruth tucked her feet under. Maggie rolled a coin over her knuckles and pretended not to be proud. I finally said what had been growing in me like a root through hardpan. If the law asked me to define this household, I couldn't without lying to it. But if a man's measure is whether he keeps his word and shows up at sunup, then I belong here as sure as my brand burns true. Belonging isn't a vow, Helena said. It's a practice. Then I'll practice, I told her. Poorly some days, loudly others. A moth battered the lamp glass. A horse in the dark snorted and settled. The weight of my old life slid off like a shed coat, and something new settled on my shoulders, patched, sturdy, mine. I used to think Marcus Vance robbed me. Maybe he did. He took the money I'd bled to earn and left his debts like a noose. But the road he shoved me down ended on this porch, across from 3 people who call me partner when the work's good and when it's bad. If that's the price of being swindled, I'll pay it twice and sign bold dot tomorrow. We'll mend the north fence where the post leans. There's a heifer due, and a storm building over the ridge. The days ahead will be ordinary and hard. They'll also be ours. When the sun lays down its last light across the field, this place will look back and know its family unconventional, untidy, unafraid, and real.